what is broken inside of these social networks. And I don't think it's a technical problem. So just to put it out there, I don't think it's it's one where there are these nefarious organizations. That happens. Brigading XYZ, that happens. But the real problem is a psychological one that we're dealing with. If I was running Facebook for a day, the big opportunity, in my opinion, was really not the metaverse, but it was actually getting the closest that anybody could get to AGI. And if I had to steel man that product case, here's how I would have pitched it to the board and to Zuck. I would have said, listen, there are 3.5 billion people monthly using this thing. If we think about human intelligence very reductively, we would say that there's a large portion of it which is cognitive, and then there's a large portion of it which is emotional. We have the best ability to build a multimodal model that basically takes all of these massive inputs together to try to intuit how a system would react to all kinds of stimuli. That, to me, would have been a profound leap forward for humanity.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? So in terms of, now this is a board meeting, how would that make Facebook money?
I think that you have all of these systems over time that we don't know could benefit from some layer of reasoning to make it better. What does Spotify look like when, instead of just a very simple recommendation engine, it actually understands sort of your emotional context and your mood and can move you to a body of music that you would like? What does it look like if, your television, instead of having to go and channel surf, 50,000 shows on a horrible UI, instead just has a sense of what you're into and shows it to you? What does it mean when you get in your car and it actually drives you to a place because you should actually eat there even though you don't know it? These are all random things that make no sense a priori, but it starts to make the person or the provider of that service the critical reasoning layer for all these everyday products that today would look very flat without that reasoning. And I think you license that and you make a lot of money. So in many ways, instead of becoming more of the pixels that you see, you become more of the bare metal that actually creates that experience. And if you look at the companies that are multi-decade legacy kinds of businesses, the thing that they have done is quietly and surreptitiously move down the stack. You never move up the stack to survive. You need to move down the stack. So if you take that OSI reference stack, right, these layers, how you build an app from the physical layer to the transport layer, all the way up to the app layer, you can map from the 1980s all the big companies that have been created, right? All the way from Fairchild Semiconductor, NatSemi, to Intel, to Cisco, to 3Com, Oracle, Netscape at one point, all the way up to the Googles and Facebooks of the world. But if you look at where all the lock-in happened, it's by companies like Apple, who used to make software, saying, I'm going to get one close. I'm going to make the bare metal and I'm going to become the platform. Or Google, same thing. I'm going to create this dominant platform and I'm going to create a substrate that organizes all this information. That's just omnipresent and everywhere. So the key is, if you are lucky enough to be one of these apps that are in front of people, you better start digging quickly and moving your way down and get out of the way and disappear. But by disappearing, you will become much, much bigger and it's impossible to usurp you.
If you were to build a new social network today, how would you fix Twitter? How would you fix social media? If you want to answer a different question, is if you were Elon Musk, somebody you know, and you were taking over Twitter, what would you fix?
I've thought about this a little bit. First of all, let me give you a backdrop. I wouldn't actually build a social media company at all. And the answer is, the reasoning is the following. I really tend to believe, as you've probably gotten a sense, of sort of patterns and probabilities. And if you said to me, Chamath, probabilistically answer where are we going in apps and social experiences, what I would say is, Lex, we spent the first decade building platforms and getting them to scale. And if you want to think about it, again, back to sort of this poker analogy, others' mistakes minus your mistakes is the value. Well, the value that was captured was trillions of dollars, essentially to Apple and to Google. And they did that by basically attracting billions of monthly active users to their platform. Then this next wave were the apps. Facebook, QQ, Tencent, TikTok, Twitter, Snapchat, that whole panoply of apps. And interestingly, they were in many ways an atomized version of the platforms, right? They sat on top of them. They were an ecosystem participant, but the value they created was the same. Trillions of dollars of enterprise value, billions of monthly active users. Mm-hmm. Well, there's an interesting phenomenon that's kind of hiding in plain sight, which is that the next most obvious atomic unit are content creators. Now, let me give you two examples. Lex Fridman, this random crazy guy, Mr. Beast, Jimmy Donaldson, just the two of you alone, add it up, okay? And you guys are going to approach in the next 5 years 1 billion people. The only thing that you guys haven't figured out yet is how to capture trillions of dollars of value. Now, maybe you don't want to, and maybe that's not your stated mission.
Yeah, right. But let's just look at Mr. Beast alone, because he is trying to do exactly that, probably.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy is going to build an enormous business. But if you take Jimmy and all of the other content creators, right, you guys are atomizing what the apps have done. You're providing your own curated news feeds. You're providing your own curated communities. You let people move in and out of these things in a very lightweight way, and value is accruing to you. So the honest answer to your question is I would focus on the content creator side of things, because I believe that's where the puck is going. That's a much more important shift in how we all consume information and content and are entertained. It's through brands like you, individual people that we can humanize and understand, are the filter. What is broken inside of these social networks? And I don't think it's a technical problem. So just to put it out there, I don't think it's it's one where there are these nefarious organizations. That happens. Brigading XYZ, that happens. But the real problem is a psychological one that we're dealing with, which is people, through a whole set of situations, have lost belief in themselves. And I think that comes up as this very virulent form of rejection that they tried to put into these social networks. So if you look inside of comments on anything, like you could have a person that says on Twitter, "I saved this dog from a fiery building," and there would be negative commenters. Put yourself in their shoes. How do I steel man their case? I do this all the time. I get people throw shade at me. I'm like, okay, let me steel man their point of view. And the best that I can come up with is, I'm working really hard over here. I'm trying. I played by all the rules that were told to me. I've played well. I played fairly. And I am not being rewarded in a system of value that you recognize. And that is making me mad. And now I need to cope and I need to vent. So back in the day, my dad used to drink. He would make me go get things to hit me with. Today, you go to Twitter, you spout off, you try to deal with the latent anger that you feel. So a social network has to be designed, in my opinion, to solve that psychological corner case, because it is what makes a network unusable. To get real density, you have to find a way of moving away from that toxicity, because it ruins a product experience. You could have the best pixels in the world, but if people are virulently spitting into their keyboards, other people are just going to say, you know what, I'm done with this. It doesn't make me feel good. So the social network has to have a social cost. You can do it in a couple ways. One is where you have real world identity. So then there's a cost to being virulent, and there's a cost to being caustic. A second way is to actually just overlay an economic framework so that there's a more pertinent economic value that you assign to basically spouting off. And the more you want to spend, the more you can say. And I think both have a lot of value. I don't know what the right answer is. I tend to like the latter. I think real world identity shuts down a lot of debate because there's still too much, there's a sensation that there'll be some retribution. So I think there's more free speech over here, but it cannot be costless. Because in that, there's a level of toxicity that just makes these products unusable.
Do you think Trump should have been removed from Twitter?
Here we have a guy. He promotes confrontation. He lacks decorum. He incites the fervent believers of his cause to act up and push the boundaries, bordering on and potentially even including breaking the law. He does not observe the social norms of a society that keep us well functioning, including an orderly transition of power. If he is left in a moment where he feels trapped and cornered, he could behave in ways that will confuse the people that believe in him to act in ways that they so regret that it could bring our democracy to an end, or create so much damage or create a wound that's so deep, it will take years of conflict and years of confrontation to heal it. We need to remove him, and we need to do it now. It's been too long. We've let it go on too long. The other side of the argument would be he was a duly elected person whose views have been run over for way too long. And he uses the ability to say extreme things in order to showcase how corrupt these systems have become and how insular these organizations are in protecting their own class. And so if you really want to prevent class warfare, and if you really want to keep the American dream alive for everybody, we need to show that the First Amendment, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, all of this infrastructure is actually bigger than any partisan view, no matter how bad it is. And that people will make their own decisions. And there are a lot of people that can see past the words he uses and focus on the substance of what he's trying to get across, and more generally agree than disagree. And so when you silence that voice, what you're effectively saying is this is a rigged game, and all of those things that we were told were not true are actually true.